On the Put On Waivers Podcast, MLB show. Dwayne Douglas here along with James Amato. James is wearing that Jerry Rice jersey for all the disrespect that Jerry Rice has been getting, as if he was not a good player in the National Football League. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of nuts. But we continue with our baseball stuff, and we will. The Royals are a very interesting baseball team, and we like them. I like them a lot this year. I really do. I think they're going to be a really good squad this year. Kind of going back to where they were a couple of years ago, as a team that was able to win a World Series, actually go to back-to-back World Series. And we have Rylan Stiles of the Locked On Royals podcast. Rylan, how you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So the Royals here, I love the lineup. And if we can just go, I just want to just talk about Whit Merrifield. He's like one of the best players that big baseball fans don't know, because the guy is just, I watch him play and I love the way he plays. I mean, what were your thoughts about him? Is he a guy who kind of the leader of this team, or do you feel like that's more Perez?
Yeah, I think that Whit is an elite player, and anytime that you're an elite player, you're going to have a voice that carries in a clubhouse, and Whit's taken on that leadership role. He's been the guy front and center saying, look, hold us to a higher standard. His own words say, hold us to an expectation of the playoffs this year and make us be accountable for that. And so he's been at the forefront of, this is no longer a developmental team. Another thing that he's quoted saying that he's no longer in the developmental stage. This is the stage in which a team is expecting to win. And whenever you do that and you put yourself out in front of the media that way, you have to hold up your end. And I have no doubt that individually Whit will do that on the field. He'll have to do that in the clubhouse as well. And I think that he can do that, and he can be that kind of leader this year.
The lineup looks pretty stout. Is there a prospect here? Maybe we'll see early or late that is gonna that the Royals are really high on that we can look forward to.
Yeah, Bobby Witt Jr., who is just carving up spring training. He was phenomenal in summer camp last year during the COVID season. He was great in those exhibition games. The Royals played the Astros and the Cardinals before the season restarted. He's already hit a handful of home runs in spring training, including against the Dodgers on Sunday. He is knocking on the door of this roster without playing a single legitimate minor league game. He's only played in Arizona Fall League, but yet there is a large contingent of respected MLB voices saying the Royals should call him up for opening day. He's never played but in Arizona Fall League. He's a 20-year-old kid out of high school, and he's gotten that kind of respect already from both the media. And if you look on Twitter, the veterans on this team, Hunter Dozier, Whit Merrifield, they're all saying how special this guy's going to be. And I don't know if he'll be there on April 1st, but if he continues to play this way, which there's no reason why to think that he won't play this way, he'll absolutely have a spot late April, May, July, somewhere in there, especially if this team can get off to that hot start, which their April schedule says that they will. They get off that hot start and they're in the playoff contention. He absolutely is a prospect that is worth looking at, a top 10 prospect in all of baseball. He's the guy that you look for in this lineup, especially.
Hey, Rylan, it's James here. Living in Connecticut, seeing a lot of Red Sox games and Yankee games over the last few years. I'm a huge fan of Benintendi. I like this move. I like this move a lot. It came out of left field. We had read a lot that he was on the trading block, and a lot of Red Sox fans were hoping that he wouldn't get traded. What was the feeling there when you guys got Benintendi when he came to Kansas City?
The feeling when the news broke was just, okay, this is real now. Like we had heard all off season from Dayton Moore, from the new ownership group with the Shermans, that they're done with developing. They're done with losing games and losing seasons, and they want to try to compete. Signing Carlos Santana's nice. Signing Michael A. Taylor's nice. Even bringing back Mike Minor's all right for the rotation, the back end. But whenever you go out and you give up one of your top 10 prospects and Khalil Lee, all for Andrew Benintendi, who only has 2 more years of team control. And if he does have that bounce back, history says that if he plays to the level that he has in the past, or that you hope he will bounce back to, history says that the Royals aren't in the price range of those kind of guys. So this is really solidified for a 2-year window here that you need to win games for. And whenever you make that kind of move, again, give him that top 10 prospect, it just felt real. It just felt like, okay, this is no longer coach speak. It's no longer just good PR. They legitimately mean it whenever they say they want to win.
Yeah, it's definitely because they didn't go through like they did the last time, the total rebuild and just, when we started seeing the players getting traded off, you thought that's where they were headed, that they were going to just rebuild this again and take 7 or 8 years and now they're getting right back in it. And, I think it's great for Kansas City. I grew up in an era where the Royals were in the playoffs every single year, and some, I remember the Royals Academy. They had their own baseball academy. Some of the greatest players in Major League Baseball history played for the Royals. So I think it's always good for baseball when the Royals are a good team. So, I personally, I feel this is their division to win this year, with all the changes that's been going on there, and they just got to go out in the field and do it. Who is the player that is going to drive Royal fans the craziest? Who's that enigma player on the Royals?
It's got to be, I think, Jorge Soler. I mean, here's a guy that could hit you 50 home runs. He can also shoot 10. Like, what's going to happen with Soler? He's a free agent in 2022. Where does he go from here? If he has another down year, what do you do with Soler? Do you look for a new DH? If he has a huge year, do you re-sign him, which then locks up money that Kansas City does not have a ton of? So you've really got to be, calculated with who you do choose to lock up, especially looking down the road here. Brady Singer is going to be a great young pitcher that you got to lock up soon. Down line in about 5 years, which will overlap with an extension for Soler. So you can't just throw around money willy-nilly like with Kansas City. So Soler has to decide what kind of player he's going to be, and the Royals have to evaluate him as such in these next 2 years here because he's a free agent in 2022. And Soler has the potential to be a 40 home run guy, 35 home run guy, even at Kauffman Stadium. But he's been very inconsistent, and I think that this lineup would go as Soler does.
As far as two Mikes, Mike Matheny and Michael Taylor. First on Matheny, we all know whatever happened with the Cardinals, and he's gone now, and he's in Kansas City. Has that transition been a good one? Do the teammates, the players on the team like him? Do the fan base like him? Do they see that a positive direction going with Matheny? And what do you feel like Michael Taylor's speed and his ability brings to the Royals?
With Matheny, I'll be the first to admit that whenever it was announced that whenever Ned Dos would retire, it was going to be Mike Matheny's job, I was very upset about it. I think that, in a place like Kansas City, you can't afford to mess that up. You kind of need an outside the box kind of Kevin Cash kind of guy to find your niche and find your kind of fluky thing that will work. In 2014-15, it was defense, it was speed, it was exploiting everything that baseball has forgotten about. And none of those guys on either 2014 team or 2015 team were just overwhelming household names that on paper should have been great, but they all played together. They all had a special bond. And again, they hit singles. They kept the line moving. They passed the baton. They did all the little things that have been forgotten about in baseball. And they exploited a market deficiency, which Kansas City and markets like Kansas City have to figure out a way to do. So whenever you get this burly manager who's going to do things, the old fashioned way, he's going to overturn spreads. He doesn't have the kind of relationship with players that you need. It was fearful whenever they first announced the hiring. Mm-hmm. And then last year he starts his career. He's embraced shifting. He's embraced bullpenning. He's embraced all the new age forms of baseball. And the players, unlike in St. Louis, seem to love him. And so he's truly learned from his experiences. He's had a bounce back career, just like a ball player would, with a change of scenery. And you hope to keep that going. Of course, you can't really evaluate managers until they manage in the postseason. That's where they make their money. But for the time being, he was really impressive.
As far as some folks ask like who's the MVP, but I ask like who's the one guy who they lose this guy for 60 something games, and you're probably sitting there saying, "Oh man, this is going to be a tough one to kind of replace, especially with a team like the Royals."
It's got to be Whit Merrifield because he's the only sure thing. You can talk yourself into Benintendi being good, or Carlos Santana bouncing back, or Salvador Perez, continuing his ungodly hot streak that was happening last year whenever he played half of a 60-game season. Who knows what that sample size is? You can talk yourself into Soler bouncing back or Dozier bouncing back. But The only thing that's certain is Whit Merrifield. None of that other lineup stuff is for sure. Benintendi could easily be bad. Santana could easily be bad. Same with Perez. Same with Soler. But Whit Merrifield, you know what you're going to get day in and day out. And so if he's gone and you have no stability in that lineup, then it becomes really, really scary.
As far as the division goes, my last thing here is the Royals are expected to be a pretty good team. I mean, their leaders on that team are saying, "Hey, it's time for us to go for it," especially with this lineup. The biggest competition is the Twins and the White Sox. Do you feel like one's better than the other head and shoulders, or do you feel like the Royals can kind of hang in that bunch with Cleveland, Chicago, and Minnesota?
Yeah, I think that with the Royals, as you mentioned, the Michael A. Taylor signing that we'll get to right now. I mean, Michael A. Taylor's kind of a defensive player. He fits the mold of Kansas City. He has a lot of speed. He's one of the worst hitters in baseball, though. So for me personally, if you're one of the worst hitters in baseball, but an elite fielder, you kind of average out to be an average player. So that doesn't move the needle too much for me. If he can become a below average hitter and an elite fielder, that changes everything. And whenever he's your 9-hole hitter, that's pretty good, especially in that huge outfield at Kauffman Stadium. All in all, as a team, though, because of that move, because of signing him and Santana and Minor and trading for Benintendi, I know that in a market like this in baseball where owners are cutting money left and right, it's a pandemic. They're trying to be cheap. They're trying not to pay their minor leaguers. They're trying to do everything possible to save a buck. But Kansas City has shown we're going to keep paying our minor leaguers. We're going to keep going out there and building a team. We're going to keep trying to improve our roster. So at the deadline, they will have no problem gaining money back and becoming a better team via trades if they're in the mix. So that's a plus that I don't think many other baseball fan bases have right now in that confidence level of their ownership group. Now, with the division itself, in baseball more so than other sports, I believe in that hokey stuff. I believe in clubhouses. I believe in management. I believe in all of that. And if you like the guy next to you because you're with them more than you're with your actual family, unlike in other sports, I believe in all of that. And so I don't know how La Russa is going to be in Chicago. I don't know if those players are going to go along with him or respect him.
Me either. That's a big question mark.
I don't like the La Russa hiring.
I hate that hiring. I hate it.
Yeah, I hate it too. It scares me to death. I mean, that's a really good team on paper, but it scares me to death what will happen in that locker room if things don't go right in April. What happens to that team then if they get off to a bad start? And they're young players. They're good players, but they're young players. They could be inconsistent for a month. Does La Russa turn over the post-game dinner onto the floor on April 15th against all these young guys and start screaming at them and MFing them all up and down because he's an old school kind of guy? Does he have a DUI in a couple months? Who knows what's going to happen with La Russa, to where that, to me, brings down Chicago more towards Kansas City's level, even though on paper, their roster to me is a lot better. With Minnesota, they're banking on a lot of things like Nelson Cruz. Eventually, he's got to fall off a bit. Eventually, Father Time catches up with everybody. So that, to me, makes them not as unbeatable. In Cleveland, same type of thing. They're already having COVID issues with keeping their guys in the COVID protocol. I don't believe in their lineup at all. I think that their pitching is good, but outside the top three, I'm not just kind of fearful of the entire team. And I don't think that with that change of trading off your franchise shortstop, I don't think that locker room, that clubhouse is all there. And then the same thing with Detroit. I think that Kansas City is just better on paper than Detroit.
Yeah.
I think that this is at worst a third place team. At best is going to be a team that can compete for the division and be a wild card team, and they'll probably land somewhere in between there.
Okay. Look, if you're a young player on Cleveland, you see how they treated Lindor, and you know you don't have a future there because they're just not going to sign you. That's going to impact that team more than people think. Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. Well, listen, I totally the Royals are going to be an interesting team. You know, a couple of my friends who we play MLB the show have already we play a whole season, and a couple of people were fighting over the Royals, which is I thought was pretty cool. As far as that goes, but they should be a fun team to watch, and I definitely I want to thank you for coming on and put On Waivers Podcast, the MLB show, and we'll talk to you later.
Just keep Minnesota away from the Yankees in the playoffs. Please win this division.
Yes, please. It's such a wasted series. Please, please do it, please. All right, Rylan, thank you.
Thank you.
at Rowland Styles put on Royals podcast, kind of breaking down what could be one of the surprise teams in baseball. Let's roll over to the Mets for 1 second, because the Mets didn't they do this thing where they practiced what the celebration would be if they won the World Series? Some people have a problem with it. I personally don't.
I don't. No.
I think if you put positive things in the air, positive things could happen. What are your thoughts about people going crazy about the Mets doing this?
I have no issue with it, and it wasn't that they were faking. They were practicing winning the World Series. It's a new technique that's catching on at a lot of places called visualizing. So it was like, I want you to visualize like you've just won the World Series. It's not we're practicing to win the World Series. I have zero issues with this at all, one bit, and I think it's just getting blown out of proportion.
Yeah, I think it was. Leave the Mets alone. Leave the Mets alone. Leave the Mets and Patrick Ewing alone.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, like it's security. If you see a 7 foot, almost 270 guy coming in the ballpark, you probably played or something. Somewhere around lines.
He was the star of The Exorcist 3.
Exorcist,
how do you not recognize Patrick Ewing?
Patrick Ewing, I don't know. I mean, it's almost like you see that guy behind you. Like that's me. Like that picture in Madison Square Garden. As far as
pretty much.
I mean, seriously. I mean, besides them winning it, this was the biggest thing out there. Did you see the behind the scenes of Wanda?
No, I have not seen that yet. I've had a lot of people talking about that.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was
I have to watch that.
And I thought it was like, I mean, like they have the money to go out and do those things because they're Disney, but like I did think it interesting that they had an opportunity to bring in a crowd of like a live studio audience for the comedy parts. It wasn't just laugh track.
That was actually amazing that they did that.
And I
did read that. I didn't, like I said, I didn't see the behind the scenes.
For the actors,
I did read that.
Yeah, James, for the actors, that must have been really cool though, because they can just go in like full like stage mode as far as that goes. I mean, it'd probably be easier for them to do that than opposed to them doing it with a laugh track, in the background, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it makes a huge difference, especially the actors in this have never been in that sitcom situation before a live audience, so yes. It was definitely really cool.
Have you seen? You have HBO Max, right?
Yes.
Have you seen this Allen versus Farrow thing?
It's the most disturbing thing on TV.
It really is.
It's really
on
bad.
So many levels. Like it really is, and it's hard. I think it's. You know what I do think though? I do think
it's a train wreck, and you can't stop watching it.
Yes,
that's the thing about it. And I have to watch episode 4 tonight.
Yeah, it's important to watch though. I think it's important to watch, but I do think you might. I mean, you might hold your kids a little bit tighter watching this thing. It's really a lot going on, and it's just
and he's a lot more creepier. And I remember when this happened, and obviously it's much different nowadays than back then. But like the episode 3 with the whole investigation and how Yale possibly covered this up, is just crazy. But he's a lot worse than I remember, and like even the one guy comparing all his movies to like his lifestyle, like he prepared you for this.
Oh my God.
All his movies, he was an older man chasing a younger woman.
Every movie was the same. Well, every movie was that same story, and it was almost like he was kind of normalizing it for the nation, like and he was. And listen, say what you want, the guy was winning Oscars on these things, so it's like really kind of like. I mean, some stuff. Yeah, you gotta look in the mirror as far as that goes.
Yeah, another good documentary that actually surprised me. I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was the on Hulu. Soleil Moon Frye, who was Punky Brewster.
I gotta write that one down.
She pretty much recorded everything she did from the period of like 1985 to like 2000, no, maybe 19 to like 2005. But just like all these young actors who she grew up with, and it's really, honestly, if you have a teenager, and whether they're going into celebrity or not, you want to watch this, because she had at least 6 friends who ended up taking their lives, and they were laying the clues out. Like, they were basically telling you on video, that they weren't happy, and these are the signs you need to look for to get people help.
Yeah, that's crazy. And
But it's a really good documentary. It's funny, but you see like a lot of young actors. I mean, Leo DiCaprio when he was young. You see a grown-up Balthazar Getty, like, who you probably haven't heard his name since the 90s. But it's a really good documentary, and I highly recommend it.
It's interesting because I mean I know we have nowadays we have that kind of that mental health focus, like, you know what I'm saying, people talk about it now openly, and I mean, listen, back then, like, even like as far as back as the 80s, like, you were not, like, people weren't getting treated for those things, like they weren't having somebody to go talk to you,
they weren't. And again, this is the era, like, really pre-internet. I mean, the internet was there, but this is not picking up your phone and recording everything, and her friends are making fun of her for always having her camera out and recording stuff. But she was playing voicemails from Mark Wahlberg, from like 92, 93. So it's just a really good documentary, and a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I had nothing to do this Friday morning because WandaVision was on. So I watched that,
Yeah, I watched that,
in place of it. And, it was, like I said, check it out. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, you definitely got to remember that stuff. I mean, that's really interesting that Soleil Moon for Punky Brewster. I remember that show very, very vividly.
Yeah, and she's actually, I mean, she's grown up to be a very, I don't want to come over the wrong way, like, just a very elegant, smart, intelligent woman. And you don't see that from, especially the child stars from the 80s. They all seem to, have some issues, and she doesn't really have anything, but like, she's very open and blatant about, like, her drug and alcohol use. She wasn't an abuser. She drank a lot, she did drugs, but she's showing you, and like a perfect example is in like one scene, she's showing you her smoking dope, smoking pot. And dope just made me sound like I'm 80 years old.
That's right.
But then in the next scene, she's at a rally telling kids to not do drugs.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's interesting. I would say, like, to me too, is like, it's just like one of those things where, like, people, especially young people, they want to be like, they're all about the likes, they're all about the getting stuff, getting follows and everything like that, and it's really like this, like, want to be a star stuff, especially when you're young. Like, it really, can I think of, maybe she's maybe the one, but like, can I think of anybody who had a clean childhood through Hollywood? Like, it's you're around adults who are smoking, drinking.
That's one thing she talks about too,
all the time.
How as a 13-year-old girl, when she started to mature, how adults were treating her like an adult.
Yeah.
And they weren't realizing this is a 13-year-old girl. It's a really good documentary, and I highly recommend it.
So definitely check that out. We if you got a couple of recommendations there for you. Coming to America for Laughter. I'm gonna get a little serious, go a little Solo Moon Fry, and then you're gonna get really serious.
If you want to get
you want to get
queasy,
physically sick a little bit, maybe. Allen versus Pharaoh. Out there as well. I had one more. Well, we did have a question off the text line about the A's and the over under. What we think about the A's, but I think what we'll do, we will hold that till next week when we preview that division. I think that's to be fair. That's probably the best way to do it. Not to cram it in at the end, but I do hate the A's. Just so you know, I totally discussed that. I hate the A's whatsoever.
I know you do.
They made a movie about a team that doesn't win championships. I don't know how that works. We got 3 in 1 decade. All right, cool. All right, James. Thank you. No, the jersey looks fresh. I would if I I could definitely rock a Raiders Jerry Rice jersey because
You could.
I cannot. It just drives me crazy. This whole conversation, that picture that they had, drives me crazy. Like, who's the best? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
It's who's second best.
who's second best? It's really that simple. All right, James. Take care, brother.
Have a good one.